Welcome everybody to this month's Contact Center Network. It's what we're on month 8 of the Contact Center Network. So it feels like it's flown by, and it's so pleasing to have so many people still tuning into these events, and people chomping at the bit to be speakers as well. And thank you very much for Katy and Phil today for taking up the mantle. We've got a really great session planned for you. I think those that know Katy and know Phil know that they've got a lot to say. And know that they're very insightful people. So I'm not going to big you up too much. I'll let you introduce yourselves shortly. But what I will do is just share my screen and just there we go. And just do a little bit of an intro today. So yes, we are number 8 in the Contact Center Network, and I set these up probably back up early March, just to kind of try and help bring the contact center community together while we're in this whole weird state of flux. Who knew it was going to last a whole 8 months? And it feels like it's never ending. But the end is in sight as we come into a new tiered fashion, and hopefully it will mean that we can start to do more things face to face, but each to their own and each to their own tier. So just to kind of go through a little bit of the agenda for today. So if there is any links or any useful information that you want to share into the chat, you can do that now. So if you want to introduce yourselves and use this as an opportunity to network, make new connections, and spread the love and spread the joy, feel free to drop any useful LinkedIn profiles, useful links to websites and stuff into the chat, and we can make sure that gets shared. We're going to be doing a little bit of a charity Christmas appeal, which Sarah is going to talk us through very shortly. And then what I want you all to do today is any questions that you've got, let's drop them into the chat. So any questions that we've got around the state of the contact center, anything that you might have for Phil, anything that you might have for Katy, drop it into the chat and Sarah will help facilitate those. But I want to use this as a bit of a Nostradamus moment, is to say, right, what are our predictions for 2021 into the contact center? So if you on the call today have any insightful predictions that you want to kind of rest your mantle on, drop those into the chat today for hashtag 2021 predictions, and we might pull a few of those out as we go through. If not, Phil or Katy might allude to some as we go through some of the presentations. So I set the Contact Center Network up 8 months ago, and it's under the Fab Solutions banner, which is my business. And that's a business that helps contact centers improve customer experience. We do that in one of 4 ways. So looking at how your process is set up, looking at how well your people are trained and supported, looking at the leadership capability that sits within your organization and how they support your people, and then overall process and technology. So 4 things that I'm really passionate about and things that I try and help contact centers do. And this is why I'm trying to pull on different people from the industry that can help us talk about some of these things and bring some of this stuff to life, so we can share some best practice, share some ideas, and just generally bring together a community that's of like-minded people that want to have a bit of a discussion about some of these topical things right now, because it's kind of easy to get stuck in your own silos, your own bubbles, be it a COVID bubble or your own work-related bubble. So trying to spread the love and spread the joy within any of these 4 things. And we'll be having more sessions in the new year, which will be centered around some of these topics as well. So if you know of anybody that would like to be a guest speaker, or you think on the call you'd love to kind of join the panel, I'd love to hear from you. Here are our panelists though. So you've got me on the far left. I'll kind of try and add pearls of wisdom where I possibly can, but there are 2 other people that have got a lot more pearls than I can add, and that's Katy Forsyth, who's the co-founder and director of Recruitment, and Phil Anderson, who's the director of the forum. And if you've not heard of Phil, where have you been? The forum's been around for the last 20 years. As has Phil, although he doesn't look 20, do you, Phil? I kid. So I'm going to hand over to our helper for today, who's Sarah Taverner from the Minds Advisory Group. And Sarah has a special appeal that she'd like to make on behalf of MAG Today, who's the official charity for Fab Solutions. And I say official, that means I do an occasional 10K run for the Minds Advisory Group and try and get some sponsor money for them. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's got a special Christmas themed appeal. Is it Christmas themed, Sarah? I'll let you take the mantle and I'll let you go through your slide for today.
Thanks for that, Gary, and great to see everyone again. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time, and Gary's been very generous in giving me a little space to speak. Basically, MAG are a Manchester-based organisation working in 26 countries around the world to clear landmines and unexploded bombs for the benefit of conflict-affected communities. So people who are living with some of these deadly items literally on their doorsteps, we go in and we get rid of them so that people can live, work, play without fear of death or injury. What I really wanted to appeal to everyone to do, if possible, over the Christmas break, is to listen to our BBC Radio 4 appeal. So it'll go out 3 times over the Christmas period, twice on the 27th of December, once on the 31st of December, and it's been presented by the very wonderful Rosamund Pike, who you can see on your screen here, who is a MAG ambassador, and it's focused on MAG's work in northeast Nigeria, where there are around 2 million people displaced by conflict and ongoing conflict there, which is pretty much unreported, if not just underreported. And many of you won't even have known that there was a conflict raging in northeast Nigeria. People are living in camps, and those camps are surrounded by landmines and improvised landmines that are powerful enough to blow up a car, but sensitive enough to be triggered by a child's footstep. So please listen if you can. We would absolutely love if you would encourage other people to listen and to give. Gary has already pledged to listen and to give, no pressure, Gary, on the day. And if you can wait until the appeal goes out, every penny that you give them will go towards that appeal. So I will share my email address in the chat if anyone wants any other information, if you want kind of banners to share internally. But we'd absolutely love for you to be involved in the way that Fab Solutions are involved. So thank you very much. More information will be provided. Thanks, Gary.
And when we could do mass runs, Sarah, I've committed to running for you again.
I will hold you to that, Gary, so just be aware.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Sarah is going to be manning the chat today. So if you've got any questions or any useful information that you want to share, drop that into the chat and Sarah will liaise with me in the background, and we'll try and surface some of the questions and the insights that you share today. But without further ado, let's get into the meat of today's topic. And I'm going to invite onto the Zoom platform the lovely Katy Forsyth to introduce herself and to go through her slides for today. So Katy, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand over to yourself. Thank you very much. Take the floor. It's yours.
Thanks, Gary. Very nice to meet you. I definitely recognise some names, but for those of you that don't know me, hi, very nice to meet you. I'm Katy, as Gary said, and I'm really grateful to be here. I hope I can add some value for you today. Just a bit of background. So I own and direct a contact centre recruitment business, which I've had for 20 years, called Red. And have been in the contact centre recruitment space for 25 years, and worked on all across the UK, and so know the industry and the market, I hope, pretty well. And I'm today going to talk to you, I'm just going to share my screen a second, about some research that some of you, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you'll have been bored to death by this data, because it's a very long report, but I'm going to share with you just a very an overview of that survey. And the survey looked at the effect of COVID on contact centres and predictions for the industry for 2021. And Gary's kindly given me 15 minutes just to give you an overview of that. But I'm very aware this is about adding value. So please, if we touch on anything and anyone's got any questions, I'd really welcome them. So the survey looked at those two things. I'm not going to talk about what it reported in terms of how it affected the contact centre today, because we've all lived that dream for the last 9 years and we've got that t-shirt. I'm going to concentrate on looking at the predictions for 2021 and what the survey told us about where we see the industry going next year. But you've got to understand that I'm coming from this from a recruiter's perspective. I do a lot of general consultancy and contact centre, but my number one is recruitment. And so I always look at these things from an agent's perspective. So I'm coming at this from how a contact centre agent is feeling. And those views are often quite different. So I'm going to look at the mismatch there through this. This survey was about 70 pages long in terms of results. I'm going to zip you through just the top 10 of those. And if I run out of time, I'll zip through even quicker. And I promise I'll stay on time, Gary, before you panic. Right, let's look at the first, the hotly discussed topic at the moment. Where do centres see their agents working next year, 2021 and beyond? Well, of course, everyone is saying we're going to go fully blended. It's a great, 6% at the time last month were saying they were going to stay 100% office-based. The majority are saying blended. Great, what a lovely concept. Do we think it will actually come out like that, whereas lockdowns ease and we've got the joy of hopefully some carrot at the end of the, some light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccination? Actually, senior leaders that I'm talking to at the moment, I'm definitely feeling the vibe that more and more are going to be getting back to the offices and the weight will be much more office driven. So I guess what we need to look at is how the agents are feeling like that. Now, just to be aware, Red place thousands of agents in contact centre jobs every year. We survey them every single month, 200 agents a month, to get the feeling of how agents are feeling. The most recent survey has clearly seen fast increase in the number saying they want to be back in offices. So first lockdown, about 70% saying I want to work from home. Break between the two lockdowns, we saw a surge and 50% were saying they wanted, or just shy of 50% wanted to be back in offices. Now we're seeing that number grow. Now, a really important thing to consider here is the demographics. Nearly 100%, 97% of the agents that we have in the UK agent population are either millennials or Gen Zs, and we can whitewash them that with the answer to this question: how are agents feeling? Gen Zs are your sub 23-year-olds, millennials are your post 23s, and actually when you look at those different groups, they're feeling a bit different. So if I look at my Gen Zs at the moment, the agents who are Gen Z, sub 23, they're the ones that we hear the horror stories of. They're sat on their beds using ironing boards as desks. They're the ones who are in shared flats, sharing Wi-Fi with their parents, not having the capabilities to work as ably as they should be able to at home. The millennials, 23 plus, they're the ones who have slightly more committed. They may have children, they certainly may have their own living space. And we're seeing a difference in those. So we're definitely seeing the younger agents want to be back in the offices. The millennials upwards are happy to blend. Now, the younger agents that want to go back in the office obviously want to go back there because they want that camaraderie. It's really important to these young, I call them kids. I sound about 90, but forgive me. But that camaraderie is really important. But put with that the fact that they actually need more support to be great at their job and they haven't got their ability to do it well from home. I'd be very surprised if we don't see a much greater weighting. And bear in mind that it's the fastest growing area of agents. So Gen Zs by next year, we're predicting will be 70% of the workforce. So we have to accommodate them. So a lovely thought to have the blended, but my feeling will be it'll be much more for contingency, snow, overtime, antisocial hours and all that. And actually these agents are going to drive us back into offices more than we think. Right, I promise I won't talk so much about every slide. I'm going to zip on engagement. We've talked to death about engagement. What did the senior leaders? It's important I say, and I didn't say at the top end, this survey was 54 senior leaders from around the UK, from 54 contact centres in a 1-hour meeting with me. So this is 54 different contact centres giving us this data. Engagement, you can see what the senior leaders thought were important. What I wanted to bring to you was that's not actually what the agents are telling us is important for engagement. Yes, they love the, certainly the treat packs. Yes, they love the bingo, everything else. But actually, when we're asking them what's engaging you, why do you want to stay in your job? Or more importantly, why are you looking to leave your job? They're saying things like, if they're in the office, I need them to take COVID rules seriously and they're not, I want to leave. Or if they're at home, I need them to look after me a bit more. I haven't even got a decent chair, I want to leave. Team leaders, absolutely the #1 engagement tool. The #1 reason we're seeing people wanting to leave their jobs at the moment is they don't think they're getting enough support from team leaders. It's also the #1 engagement tool if people want to stay in their job. I love my team leader, they're really looking after me. Training, all of that stuff. I could talk about this for hours, but those, just be aware that actually what we as senior leaders are saying, oh yeah, it's really engaging. I do bingo once a week. actually that's not what the agents are finding engaging. Right, let's look, let me just move this, I can't see my screen for, let's look at the skill set. Only 41% of respondents said to me, yeah, we're changing our skill set. I would dispute that. If you have had home working, office-based agents and you've moved them to home, or if you're recruiting now home-based agents and you used to recruit office, the skill set has certainly changed. We need more resilience, more self-motivation. We need them to be better able to deal with vulnerable, angry, complaining, more complex customers. By virtue of the fact that in this survey, 69% of the centres said we've had increased traffic, but we've not increased our staff, AHT's gone up, that brings more stress and occupancy. Those guys, these agents are dealing with more stressful jobs and new processes and technology to get around at home. These agents are tomorrow's agents suddenly come in today. So the skill set has changed. What do the agents think about that skill set when we survey them? They love it. They love the challenge. They're narcissistic, these generations. They want to feel really important. They love the change, but it comes with a big but. They don't like it if they don't feel supported or it feels uncertain. So if you're putting all this pressure on them and expecting them to be much more resilient, but you're not backing them with a team leader who's got an arm around their shoulder, or you're not giving them the training that they need on the new channels that you're chucking at them, then we're in attrition issues there. So it comes back again, doesn't it, to that leadership and that team leader. The agents are willing to do it, but they need supporting. Okay, so this is an interesting one, I think, in that when we ask senior leaders, what do you think your top gripes of your agents are? You can see what they said to us there. Technology is number one, lack of real time number two. Well, of course, they're gripes for the agent, and they absolutely come out as gripes for the agent, but they're not in their top three gripes. They were in the heart of lockdown. They were the same. That's what agents were griping about. Now, number one, I sound like I've got something against team leaders. I love team leaders. They're the backbone of our industry. But the number one gripe, not enough team leader support or not enough time offline with my team leader about other stuff but productivity. Number two, too much time on one discipline at home, which gets really boring, and I've not got the camaraderie to break that up. If you're in a contact center and you're dealing with transactional or repetitive voice, you can at least get up and have that water cooler conversation. If you're at home and all you've got to talk to is your mum, they get quickly bored, don't they? Number three, and this is really interesting because this has spiked this month, and this will be a direct reflection, I believe, of winter, the lack of social interaction. Camaraderie's come back up, missing camaraderie. And when we actually delve into that with the agents, what they're saying to us is they're getting up in the dark, they're moving from their dark bed to the end of their bed to take calls. They don't even go out for lunch because they just grab something out of the fridge. At the end of the day, it's dark again and they crawl to watch TV and then they're back in bed. And so they're really missing that social interaction of actually getting up in and going into the office and seeing some daylight. And then we get to tech being a problem. So their gripes are very different to ours. Right, the agents and their main challenge is productivity. Everybody is talking about how to make our home workers more productive, aren't we? I'm talking about it all day, every day at the moment. And this is what we're talking about as senior leaders. What do we have to get over to make our agents more productive? What the agents actually say, and one of our questions on our survey is, how can you be more productive in your job? Number one, I need better Wi-Fi. So if you're not sending dongles that way, we had some really interesting conversations on a webinar I was on last week with about this. The Wi-Fi is a problem, VPNs and logins slow. And then number three, actually, customers just need more time. They're talking to me more, they've got more complex queries, they're less forgiving. We all know customer tolerance has dropped now. And actually, it's really difficult for me to give them that time when the VoIP is so bad and my AHT is just getting worse, not better. And that to get more productive, I need all of those things to improve. And then I need more real-time management and technology. So there's a lot that the agents are asking for at the moment. I'm giving you, by the way, a really negative view, aren't I? By and large, agents are really happy and loving life, but I'm just giving you what they're telling us. Right, customer channels changing. So we've talked about tomorrow's agents for about the last 5 years. They've very hurriedly come in the last 9 months. And channels are changing. As you see there, the senior leaders are absolutely saying they're changing their channels. Tech, sorry, let me just get my head together. So increased social, increased self-serve, web chat, all of that stuff. How are the agents feeling? Well, again, Gen Z, millennials embrace variety. Quite frankly, they'll embrace anything which moves them away from doing 100% voice, and they'll grab it and they want it. But again, they need supporting with that learning. The other important point that brings up here is the issues that they have with knowledge banks and how important your knowledge banks become if you're moving on them onto those different channels, because actually we're not supporting them enough with real-time training. So they need to have those knowledge banks, and they really stress if they don't have that. They also showing some frustrations and seeing spikes in frustrations where they're asked to do certain media channels, but they don't have the CRM tools don't work through those channels, and they simply don't feel like they can do a good job. We've got to remember, agents always want to do an amazing job. Right, I'm going to zip past that one unless I'm going to take up to Phil's time, and I can feel the clock ticking. Shrinkage, well, I'm definitely on Phil's turf here, but let me just quickly address shrinkage. I see it from a recruiter's point of view. So I'm concerned about sickness, lateness, sickness, lateness and attrition. Sickness is bizarrely, we're seeing that going back up. We saw it go up much more than we were expecting during that second easing of the lockdowns. We're seeing a trend of it going up again. That's complacency generally. Agents saying, well, I'm at home now, I'm used to it, I'm going to phone in sick. Long-term sickness, we're obviously seeing an increase. The other stuff that I just wanted to note here when we think about workforce planning and shrinkage is actually boredom of working at home without the camaraderie and without all the stuff we talk about is leading to sickness, and isolation. It can easily lead to sick. So we're having agents saying, oh, it's just easy now. I just phone and say I'm isolating, or I feel sick, or I've got COVID symptoms and I don't feel well enough today. So a bit of a worrying trend and an increase in sickness that we probably all need to consider as we go into next year. Right, this, dare I say the word attrition? Let me just move that. Attrition, I could do a 2-day presentation on contact center attrition, so I'm going to try and cover it in 30 seconds. We look at this as our most important measure as recruiters. It's also the most important measure because we've got to maintain an industry of choice status, and with high attritions, we don't get that, and it's more difficult to get the talent. We're hugely concerned about attritions for next year at the moment. They are really worrying. We've had a year where we probably recruited too high a caliber in to do the jobs we're asking them to do, so we're expecting exit next year for that. We've got stressful jobs. We've got the uncertainty of where will I be working, which this generation, particularly Gen Z, just don't like that uncertainty. And on top of all those COVID related things, we've got the age old stuff rearing its head. Agents saying, I've been working at home for too long now. Why haven't I got a decent professional agent step in place or PDP plan? And all of those old attrition issues are coming back to the fore. And actually in that second break between lockdowns, we were having reports of attritions being near pre-COVID levels, which is extraordinary for a recessional market. I've worked through a number of recessions and I've never seen attritions go like this. So bit of a worry for next year. My last couple, and I will finish in the next minute, Phil, I promise. I just wanted to touch, given I am a recruiter, I thought I ought to touch on it. Recruitment and training and development. If you're concerned about recruitment, you shouldn't be. Virtual recruitment is the best way to do contact center recruitment. Red's been delivering fully virtual recruitment since 2017. And the reason we changed is because that's what these candidates want. They're digital creatures. They will engage in the process much better. It's a much better recruitment process. So I hope we don't go back to too many physical recruitment. That's good. What's not so good, and I'm sorry for any trainers on, it's definitely not working in the virtual training world at the moment. We're doing loads of research on this with various forums. I'm yet to see a case study where virtual training works as well as face-to-face. More attrition, more sickness, slower speed to competency, and more long-term attrition. And that's because these kids, and I'm sorry, I mean that in the most respectful way, they like training physically. They need that. They're used to it from schools and colleges, and they're used to it from the other industries they're coming into. And I will round off with a very quick, okay, so where's the good news in all of this? The good news is that senior leaders in the industry are saying, We want to give our agents more flexibility. It's great, COVID's proved we can. We have proved that our business can be agile and we can give our agents what they need. And we've got a team that's immensely proud of what they've achieved. And I absolutely herald that and agree with it wholeheartedly. I would just put, I guess my parting shot to you would be, when you're looking at strategies for next year and looking at your future contact center, always look at that through the eyes of the agent as well, because everything that we need to achieve relies on great agents. And that, I think, is me done in 15.2 minutes. I hope that's okay.
Katy, that was insightful. And I think if there's any questions that anybody's got for Katy, drop them into the chat now and we'll start to have a little bit of a Q&A. I suppose, excuse me, one of my questions, Katy, was you did a lot of analysis of what senior leaders think in comparison to what the reality is. When you played some of this back to some of those senior leaders, what was their reaction to some of the kind of the difference, I suppose?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I think it's really interesting because we're all learning every day, aren't we? We manage large temporary workforces, so we're the same. And no one can predict how agents are feeling or going to behave. And we've never seen anything like it. So we all thought they behaved like they did in the recession. And they're not, and they're changing like the wind. Every time Boris tells us to do something, these agents are listening and they change their behaviors accordingly. So the reaction is nothing is surprising anyone at the moment. But I guess when I sit down and particularly to the people who've been involved in this survey, the main thing is that everyone is keen to retain their talent. So everyone is listening more than they've ever listened, because actually what none of us need next year is a huge attrition, because we've got enough problems on our plate. So we're seeing a lot of call to action and a lot of people really listening to what the agents want. I will say as well, the trouble with that is these agents, they're living through a time where the government seems to be doing anything they want to do. Yeah, you're out of work, we'll pay you anyway. They've never seen big business treat people like they've treated them, bent over backwards. We've given them an inch and they will want to take a mile. So we've got some behavioural stuff to deal with next year as well.
And I think you're absolutely right there. And I think one of the things we've talked about in the past is, whilst we've been in this situation where we're in recession, people have been in furlough, attrition has been relatively stable, for want of a better expression, but actually moving into 2021, the likely impact of that, once all of the furlough is over and once people have more job security and they can see more stability on the horizon, that is going to increase. What do you think, or what do you anticipate that attrition is going to be like in 2021, and how steep do you think that curve is going to go?
Oh my goodness, how long have you got? Okay, it depends on your industry, obviously. Unfortunately, what's going to rear its ugly head, and I hate it, is pay. You know, what we all do is go, we need to pay more, and then everyone starts paying more, and it's a never-ending game. But these agents are going to be in high demand. There's a lot of centres, and we all know this, you'll all know this, that are working and haven't done the amount of recruitment they needed to. So there's a lot of recruitment forecast, Q2 and Q3 particularly, a lot even starting now. So there's going to be a high demand, a low, and regardless of what you hear about unemployment, we've got to remember the unemployed figures, they have certain hours and pay that they want. So it's not that easy to recruit the quality that will stay in our industry. So a short answer to your question is, we're going to be having high numbers of recruitment in an industry with candidates who are saying, I want more pay and I want better this and I want better that and I want to be in an office. And I think attritions will probably be back to horrendous levels. I mean, anything between 20 and 50, and some, you know, we've had, it's frightening. But I'm telling, when I'm being asked by forecast planning managers, what should we be building in at the moment, it's anything, depending on industry and call type and all that, anything between 20 and 45% at the moment for next year. But I'd be pleased if it stayed at that, really pleased.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Mark Walton, who was one of the previous attendees, and he was saying his attrition is around 10% as an outsourcer. Depends on how you cut that data, but I think if we could get 10%, fantastic. But I'm with you, it's probably like to be 20, 30, 40% plus. And I think what was really interesting, Katy, was your slide on shrinkage, because I did a poll recently on where people's shrinkage is falling, and it seems that a lot of contact centers at the moment are falling sub 35%. And I think the interesting point ties in with another slide that you talked about the amount of training and development that has reduced. And I think the two of them going hand in hand in that people are reducing the amount of training that they're doing. And how have you identified that through some of the conversations that you've had?
It's massive, this. Everyone's trying to get productivity high. They're trying to get shrinkage low. Actually, we've got to put much more training in and coaching and real-time help in order to help our productivity. So we've got to take that hit in the early doors. And if we don't, we'll be hit with attritions, because these guys won't continue to take that pressure when there's lots of other options of jobs out there. So we have got to at some point take a bigger hit on our productivity, or of course recruit more numbers and get it sorted that way. But we're definitely going to have to see substantial investments in training, certainly if we're staying blended. If we're staying blended, these guys need a lot more training with the omni-channel and future agents of tomorrow, and more complex queries and bots and AI, and it's never ending, isn't it? But we need a lot more training built into shrinkage plans for sure.
And I definitely agree in terms of that training perspective, but I think the other important part as well is that access to information. Certainly from a homeworking perspective, knowledge management is crucial, and being able to access the right information at the right time without kind of having to look up at multiple systems is really, really key.
Can I just say very quickly on that as well? I had a brilliant case study this week from a really big financial services who had recognised the fact that their agents weren't getting the exposure to the other departments that they were so used to when they were in the contact centre, and learning about that. So setting up an internal networking events with the different stakeholders from the different departments for the agents to hop on, so they stayed engaged with what the other departments are doing and for me, that's brilliant, because the agents really miss that whole picture.
Yeah, and that cross-pollination of ideas and
absolutely
just collaboration in that setting, isn't it? It's easy to kind of do it in the office, but much harder to do it proactively via virtual. Brilliant. That was really insightful, Katy. Everybody is asking, can they get a copy of the report? So
I'll send it to you, Gary, and then you can send it out. It's lengthy. It's definitely to help you sleep one night, but it is interesting. It shows some interesting trends.
Brilliant. And I think there is a lovely segue from the insights that you've shared, Katy, into some of the stuff that Phil is going to be talking us through for the next 15 minutes or so. So Phil, I'm going to hand over to you. I'll let you share your own screen. It should be coming through. And if there are any questions as we go through, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we can have a bit of a Q&A at the end of the session.
Excellent. Cheers, Gary. Hope you can hear me and you can see my slide. Katy, that was excellent. I know we did have a quick catch up last week, but other than that, you hadn't seen what I was going to say. I hadn't seen what you're going to say, and I'm not going to contradict you. I'm only going to actually back up, I think, some of those things. So that is,
thank goodness.
That is good. So I can promise that wasn't practice. So thank you very much, Gary, again for the invite today, and great to see so many new faces. I think if I'm looking around the room, I know Mike Smith, I think there, and I think Richard, I think from Zen Internet, I've spoken to in the past. But other than that, no one else knows me. So I'm Phil from the Forum. The Forum, 20 years old now. Our purpose 20 years ago, and it still remains now, is the purpose of professionalising the industry, professionalising what we do as support functions. So resource planning, data analytics and insight teams, quality and customer experience, as well as leadership and strategy thinking. Our ultimate aim is about raising standards in customer operations. On screen there is just a small example of some of the organisations who are members of ours. So that ranges from small councils to large government organisations. We've got banks, insurance, utilities, telecoms. The idea being is that we want to get everybody together so that we can each share what we're doing, we can learn from one another, and ultimately stop doing some of those industry habits and create some new great ideas and really start to transform and innovate. In terms of what I'm going to cover today, it's a little bit different, but probably covers some of the things that Katy spoke about there. From our conversations with our members, I sort of get a lot of insight to what's going on. So I thought I'd share some of that about what's happened from 2020, then start to open up that sort of conversation around 2021, but more about the beyond piece. Okay. And the idea of that is to hopefully reassure you that you're doing some of the things that are similar. You go, yeah, I can relate to that. There'll be a couple of differences in there. I think it's really important important to understand those outliers sometimes, because that's where the new ideas can come from. And then finally, provoke some more thought as well around in terms of what we're going to reimagine and do next. So first slide, 2020. I think we're all been in a very similar position, really. And that first bullet, I think, summarises what we've all done, which is we've kept the lights on. And I think it's important we remember that's what we've done, because our original business continuity plans were never set up for this. Back in February of this year, I was doing a forecasting course. This was all about forecasting, capacity plans and budgets for the future. And at this point in time in February, it was obviously in Italy. That was the only problem. So when we did our known knowns matrix, about talk about the things we know are going to happen and the things we don't know are going to happen, no one said what's going to happen this year is what actually happened. That's how uncertain, that's how novel, and that's how volatile this has been for us this year. And actually our BCP plans weren't up for it, so we had to do something different. Some of our members managed to get everyone home working in 2 days. That was the home group based up in the northeast. We've had others who've taken 3 months. We've also had some, and one of them is a bank, who still haven't got telephony channels at home. They're still having to go to the office to do that. And that's a decision that they've been playing a waiting game to do that. And it might only be actually next month before they can start doing that. One thing that I think has been really significant this year is that there has been a genuine employee first. And I use the word genuine in front of that because some businesses have always been quite people focused and working on it, but often it can be a bit of a statement, oh, we care for our people. But actually what we've done now is we've taken that to the next level, and that we really understand people's individual needs. We're not categorizing them. I think that's been really, really important. What I've seen more recently, speaking generally, is how lots of organisations are in a real holding place, you know, April, May, June, July. As September's come, I think people have started to go, we need to create some certainty here. I know there's still lots of uncertainty out there. We need to start either returning to our old operating hours, or we need to start rebuilding for the future. So that's what I'll touch on shortly. But in terms of a couple of general common trends that some of you may be able to relate to, I think we've all seen a movement to working from home. I've used that expression about working from home because I don't believe it is genuine home working. In some examples it is. I think, as Katy said, you've got people working off ironing boards, you've got people working off at the end of the bed. So again, where you used to have bad back was the problem, and we think we got rid of that. That's going to come back again as an issue because people haven't got the right office setup. So again, it's very difficult for those people to sort of make a judgment call on whether they want to work from home in the future, because actually they're not working in the right home working environment now to be able to make that decision. Lots of people change their operating hours, which is really important. Lots of people reduce their hours. Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, when it used to be an 8 till 8 operation, and even changed the channels. With one channel that's made a big comeback this year has been emails. It seems like it's made a comeback, whereas the last 5 years we saw people getting rid of that, moving to more web chat or say asynchronous messaging like say Facebook Messenger or things like that. Emails become very handy again. And actually it's really interesting just to see why that's become handy, okay? Why have we seen a change in that sort of customer journey that's dealing with as a business? So let's hold that thought for now. Pretty much every organisation I've spoken to, so telecoms, utilities, insurance, bank, they've all said AHT's gone up. So average handle time has increased. And again, that wasn't a worry to begin with, but as time has gone on, that lack of visibility of what's going on, because so few organisations seem to have good desktop analytics, it's meant uncertainty. We're thinking people aren't being as productive, but actually we're not trying to look at that from a customer perspective. Customers aren't talking to anyone. They can't. So it's great to have a conversation with someone. People are working at home. It's nice to actually talk to someone different. That's increased the calls. As Katy mentioned, there's a lack of team leader support. You can't just quickly shout over to someone for help. There's also a real lack of knowledge management tools really supporting people, and there's even less AI helping people, because again, artificial intelligence could be sat there working alongside people to really support them during these calls. As I've said before, informal flexible working has been introduced. I think what's really important on that one is we do have expiry dates and review dates on all of these little informal localized rules that we've set up, or in 10 years time we'll still be talking about that person that's working those hours when we set in 2020. Please don't be that business that does that. Now, the interesting one is, and I'm glad Katy mentioned this, and I had no idea she was going to say that, to begin with, customer experience actually went up. You know, you're looking at March and April, I think customers were just so delighted businesses were still open, and we were in that sort of wartime spirit at the time, everyone being together. We were delighted that, you know, customer experience remained high, but that has changed. And again, what we've seen now is people are now expecting what they used to have. So I think in terms of my personal reflections of 2020, what I'm seeing, and that I think is really good, is that there is a realisation and opportunity of home working. As Katy said, and again, I didn't know what she was going to say, it's not for everybody. And I think that's really important. I'm hearing a lot of businesses now say, oh, we're going to be hybrid moving forward. But they don't really know what that word means, and they don't really know what that means. So again, one of the stats I think you had there is about 12% would say in that they'll have a third in the office, a third at home, and a third hybrid. Why would we need them to be so precise, sort of thing? And you say working from home isn't for everyone. Working in and out of the office actually causes a huge problem, because how do you know there's going to be enough desks when everyone comes that one particular day? Why do people need to be there on those days, etc.? So I think that is great we've got the realization of it, but let's further investigate what's going on. Because the other big thing is, if you were to ask people right now, do you want to work in the office or do you want to work from home? Their decision can only be based upon what they currently know. They cannot imagine what they'll be thinking like in 12 months' time or 2 years' time. So it's really important we don't fix those decisions. One thing that has been really good, as I mentioned before, employee first. Empowering colleagues and being employee first is really, really important. However, there is a lack of data and visibility, which is leading to that trust being built. And again, because there's a lot of call centre managers who've only learned because we've been in the industry for a long period of time, we're all thinking about what gets measured, gets managed. We can't measure what they do anymore, so we don't know how to manage people. So we fall back into a default of seeing, if we don't see the data, let's start to over-manage people and think that they're not doing their job. And we need to stop that. We need to use things like desktop analytics to ensure that employees have got the information to help them understand what they're doing. Two great examples we've got Access Swift Cover, who use a tool called Pega, which is a desktop analytics tool. There are many others out there as well. And what they do for their average handle time is they'll create a daily report, weekly report, monthly report to help their advisors understand how their calls are broken down. So therefore the advisor themselves can have the conversation with the team leader about what they can improve on. And again, Motability Operations are one of our sort of shining examples of a coaching culture, where again, the frontline advisors come up with their own goals and objectives each year, and therefore they are coached, and then the team leaders support them to improve, which is I think, the best examples of employee empowerment. Final one, which I think is really important, we do remember, is that necessity did drive change fast. However, it's really interesting just to see how quickly we were able to do some of those things. And now as we start to talk about what's next, it's really interesting how this red tape comes back in again. Lots of people are wanting to hold on to their little mini empires. And again, if we don't really start to look at our customer journeys again and our employee life cycle journeys, what's going to happen is we're going to end up repairing problems. Okay, we're going to try and overcome things that don't need to be there. So again, what we need to remember is how quick things did happen, so how we can try and enable that for the future. So 2021, I think I'm going to start by saying, so I'm glad this comment hasn't come out yet. I hear a lot of people now saying, I can't wait for this year to end. And I know that's what people say. However, the 1st of January is going to be very similar to the 31st of December. The 31st of January is going to also have a very familiar feel to it. The government are using the expression after Easter. I'm not going to turn this into anything political, but they are vague at best, aren't they, the government? So after Easter is a long time as well. And we've got the reality of Brexit coming in, as well as the economic impact of this, as well as sort of the social impact of all of this. So the uncertainty is just going to get extended. So there is going to be nothing magical to happen at the start of 2021. We're going to get the same. What's really frightening, I think, in this is that actually right now, and probably rightly so, the budgets for the new year are very risk averse. They're very, very cautious. So the exact thing we don't want to happen, we're actually going to end up causing by being so cautious. So again, we do need to be aware of that. So my sort of comment on 2021 is that, first of all, it's going to be a waiting game. And I think we should use that opportunity to continue to take stock, to look back at what's worked, what hasn't worked, not to not do, but to understand why it's not worked. And remember that a lot of us are still actually working in business continuity circumstances. We are not out of the woods yet. So therefore, we still need to think about what that expiry or our exit strategy is. Really importantly, don't come up with those permanent changes now. because we don't know what's going to happen next. It is still very novel. It is very uncertain out there. So again, the more information we can get, doing things like the surveys Katy's done, by getting external surveys done, getting internal surveys done, help your people to understand their motivation and what they can do. Keep sharing ideas is going to help us set us up for the future. My opinion is that 2021 is going to be a bit of a waiting game, that we may not come out until halfway through it, and it's going to be 2022 before we really start thinking about reimagining what that future could be. Now, on that very point, what I would like it to be is where the workforce and a wellness strategy are seen as one. We don't talk about them separately. We haven't got some shift patterns in a business. We haven't got a HR strategy, and we haven't got, oh, we do a bit of wellness on the side. We have a workforce strategy that runs throughout the whole business that really does think of our employees first, because the more we can react and support our employees, the more they can offer our business. I think the other big thing that's really going to support us with our decision making is around data analytics and insight. And again, I think a lot of businesses still sit in that data section. We've got information now, but it's still very much sat in data tables, and we expect everyone in our business to be able to understand that. Some of us are getting better now with analytics, but actually what we really want to know is what we can't see, and we need to invest in that to really tell us about what's going to happen in the future. So just to sort of end really, I've got two little models to sort of show, which is things that we've worked on here. The first one on the left-hand side is our strategy pyramid. There's a real opportunity for all businesses to rethink what their strategy is, to rethink what their values are, and really think what their brand actually means. Because in turn, from those things, you can start to reset your key performance indicators. And there should only be a few of those. Main reason behind doing that is it's a new world, so let's kill off all of the old metrics. There's nothing worse than sending out a report and you've still got some old measures on there. If you think about it, how much change have we had this year? If you're still sending a report out that's got the same rag status on there that was set up 3 years ago by someone who no longer works in the business, it's going to be wrong. So let's stop doing that and let's set up some new things. Let's set up a new report with a new strategy on there, with our new focuses on there. That is likely to be probably quarterly for next year, because we know the first quarter is going to be uncertain. So let's not think too far beyond that. Let's have some targets for the first 12 weeks, then we can move them on for the period after it. Then below those sort of key performance indicators, we have performance indicators, which are at a teams section, and we've got the input measures below. The reason why it is a three-dimensional pyramid is because we should be looking at the customer journey and what that new journey is. Again, that's likely to be a temporary customer journey for now, before we maybe think of a more future-orientated one later next year. We want to think about the employee life cycle from attraction, recruitment, onboarding, training, development, and their transition, whether that's internally or externally. And again, just picking back one of the last comments Katy made, there really is going to be a war on talent next year. So we've got to really make sure we have got the right business that we can attract these people. And it won't be 100% money. It will be back to values and brands and how we can support them on that journey. The other model I think is really interesting. So this is one we've borrowed from Gartner. We have had their permission to do so, and it's in our best practice guide. But again, I think it's really important to help us understand how mature we are with our data and insights. There's still a lot of businesses who sit at the bottom left-hand corner, which is around hindsight. You know, we've got lots of post-mortem sort of death data sort of thing. This is what happened, okay? But we're not got enough about what's going to happen. And that's where we need to move to. The top right is where we want to be on here, which is around foresight. So that's even beyond insight. We're starting to look at some key assumptions which help us model our operating model for the future. And we can start to understand both our customer and our employees, which will help. So what we like to think is that in this new model, because we are aware many businesses are now starting to look at the reorganisations and restructures, which in turn leads to heavy redundancies, is think about the value of these support teams, the teams who are going to help and shape that workforce strategy, the teams who are going to deliver and update the knowledge management tools and the training. So as Katy mentioned, the team leaders play such a crucial part in all of this. And at times it's quite subtle, the things that mean the most. And then think about the value your data analytics and insight team going to offer. You can't just buy a piece of kit and expect that to tell you what's going to happen. The other thing we really need to embrace is around robotics. I've just put it as robotics on there. Actually, that's not really enough to describe this. It's about artificial intelligence. It's about automation. It's about machine learning. And it's using those things at the right time that partner us. Again, those on their own will not be able to help because, again, it's so uncertain out there at the moment. Even their assumptions could be wildly out. It's going to need lots of people working together, which is very much that last little comment there about being professional. And again, I'm really pleased Katy mentioned about the value of setting up internal forums. Set up internal forums of different people from different parts of the business to get together. You should be doing it anyway so they can learn about their different perspectives and learn what's important to them. That's also going to give them greater understanding of your customer and your business. It's then really important we do things like this, what Gary set up, and what the forum do is where we bring together different organisations into a safe environment so we can share, so we can learn, and we can hopefully make the right decisions moving forward. Gary, hopefully I kept that fairly succinct. I'll hand it back to you.
Again, another very insightful session. And I think for me, we could spend hours talking about all these different topics. I could literally listen to Katy and Phil and chew the fat and debate until the cows come home. But unfortunately, we do only have an hour because we like to keep these short, punchy, and value-adding. So from my perspective, there's some great insights to be taken from there. We can share some of the data that Katy has given us. We can share some of the data that Phil's provided with there, and I'll send that out as post-invite pack. There were a few questions that I wanted to fire through to some of the panelists, and I think that was there was a great question from Jane Morris, and it was: do we feel like the attrition is driven through? In fact, Jane, I'll let you take yourself off mute and I'll let you ask your question. It was around attrition and demand.
Yeah, your forecast for recruitment, basically, is that because of attrition or is it because of growth of businesses?
Combination of both, really, Jane. So so where do we get our data from on forecasts of recruitment? We get them from talking to clients, and I'm a director of one of the forums as well, so through forum members. And I'm coming from, I don't want you to think I'm just making data up. This is coming from large centres from around the UK, and Q2 and Q3 being large. I think they are going to have underestimated their attrition in it. So when we say we're expecting a big surge on talent next year, I think it's going to be bigger than anyone's really anticipating, because they haven't forecast enough attrition into their models. They're just looking at recruitment with probably 10 to 15% attrition, because as Phil's alluded to as well, we've all enjoyed lower attritions than any of us can really remember this year, but that's going to increase. So yeah, if that answers your question, it considers both, but I don't think they've considered attrition to the degree that they should have done. I'd be interested in Phil's take on that as well, really.
Yeah, I agree, Katy. I think next year has been probably one of the hardest years ever to forecast for.
Absolutely.
Budget plan for. And again, too often there's a top-down view, which is either incremental this year -5% or whatever,
Absolutely.
or just going on. And again, this is a real option. It should be both bottom up and top down, and meeting somewhere in the middle. I think that businesses should be looking at both a minimum and a maximum. So therefore, you've almost got a playbook there that says, actually, if recruitment starts hitting this figure, this is what we need to do. Because yeah, there's some big companies out there as well who have made some big redundancies recently, which is another reason why there's a good pool of people out there as well, which I think we need to be mindful of when it comes to this sort of war on talent and how we can recruit.
But you've got to have the right hours and the right salaries to attract those people, and it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah. I think there's another thing as well, is to suggest actually that kind of forward recruitment. We tend to react to recruitment sometimes, don't we? Where actually, if we pull all that recruitment forward and then naturally attract,
never going to happen in 25 years. It's never happened. Let's not. We've got enough battles that we're not going to win that one.
Great news for you. You've been rubbing your hands together, Katy.
No, I'm really not. No, attrition is not good news for a recruiter.
And Jane, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, thanks. So mixture of both, basically, but mostly companies are underestimating the attrition, and it's possible that actually they're going to have to replace some lower skilled people with higher skilled people to move the business forward.
I quite agree. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Definitely. And that whole assessment piece as well, for the type of person you're recruiting now, like you say earlier in your session, Katy, the skills of people have changed, so you've actually got to start to evaluate what type of person you need in the contact center overall.
Big projects for recruitment to make sure their assessments are on point now for the mixed channel.
Definitely. That is sadly all we've got time for now. I'm just going to wrap up today's session. I've dropped a survey into the chat right now, just so I'd love your feedback on how today's session's gone. I'd love your feedback on other things that you'd like to see as part of the contact center network, and some other topics that you'd like to see on kind of these events. I've also shared my screen. There are new dates that are going to be going in the diary for Q1. So put these into your diaries as placeholders so you don't miss out. But we're covering in the first quarter of next year the importance of knowledge management, how we can really cultivate a great customer experience through looking at those 4 pillars that we talked about right at the start in terms of people, process, leadership, and technology. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at how we can work on gamification in the contact center and how that can start to fuel productivity and employee engagement overall. So there's a few things that we're going to be doing there. Please do have a quick complete of that survey. It's only about 6 questions long, 6-7 questions long, and we'll be sharing more of some of the stuff that we've got coming through in the next few weeks when those dates go in the diary. But I've really enjoyed today's session. It's been really nice to kind of round off 2020, because this is the last event for this year. Taking December off, folks. Sorry, I've just taken a little break. But we will be back in January with those 3 topics coming out over the course of those 3 months. So if you do feel like you'd like to get involved in these events and you'd like to be a panelist and you've got stuff that you can share and add value with, there's some really great people on this call, and I've had the pleasure of catching up with quite a few of you. So I think there's opportunities for us all to kind of showcase some of the stuff that we've all been working on. And again, some of the insights that we've all amassed over the last kind of 8 or 9 months. But I'm going to take the last thing that is on the list, has to be done on a Zoom call. And it is the proverbial Zoom selfie. So this is your opportunity to make yourselves look gorgeous, make yourselves look really pretty and look the best that you've ever been, because we're going to take a picture. If you don't want yourself on camera, please do feel free to switch it off. But on 1, 2, 3, smile and say hello.
Oh.
There we go. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks all to everybody who's attended. There's people on here that have attended every single one of them, and it's been a pleasure to pull them all together. Thanks very much to Katy for your presentation today, and also Phil for that, and for volunteering to be panelists. And thanks very much to Sarah. Where are you? There you are on the screen. And don't forget if you want to hear more about the kind of the BBC presentation that's coming on for MAG, please do drop Sarah a note, and look forward to catching up with you all in the new year. Take care, everybody.
Cheers, Gary.